My name's Conrad. I'm 29, and if you had told me a year ago that my own brother would try to ruin one of the most important days of my life out of jealousy, I would have laughed in your face. Because that's the thing about family. You think you know them. You think they've got your back. Until one day, you wake up and realize they've been quietly sharpening the knife the entire time. I grew up in a middle-class family where appearances were everything. My mom loved having a picture-perfect image, holiday cards with everyone smiling, family dinners that looked straight out of a Hallmark movie, even though half the time we'd be arguing right before she clicked the camera. My dad was quiet, the kind who worked long hours and didn't want to get involved in drama. That left me and my older brother, Mason. He's 2 years older than me, 31 now, and he's always been the golden child. You know the type. Charming, talented, and somehow never at fault. Mason could talk his way out of anything, and my parents ate it up. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. I did my own thing, stayed out of trouble, focused on school. I wasn't jealous of Mason, not at first. I actually admired him. He was into photography since he was a teenager, and he turned it into a full-time career. Weddings, portraits, travel gigs, you name it. Everyone in our family bragged about his artistic eye. He even won a local award once, and my mom framed the certificate in the living room like it was a Pulitzer. But somewhere along the line, Mason started looking at me differently. I think it was when I got engaged to my fiancée, Leah. We met through mutual friends, dated for 3 years, and got engaged last spring. She's warm, funny, and incredibly patient, especially with my family, who can be a lot. Mason didn't take the engagement well. When I told him, he laughed and said, "Wow, didn't think you were the marrying type. Little bro, guess miracles do happen." He said it with a grin, but there was this tightness in his voice that didn't sit right with me. From that point, things started to shift. Every time Leah and I were around my family, Mason would find little ways to undermine me. If Leah complimented me for cooking dinner, he'd say something like, "Oh, I didn't know Conrad could even boil water." If I mentioned a project from work, he'd joke, "Careful, bro, don't strain yourself being productive for once." It was like he couldn't handle me being happy. When we started planning the wedding, Leah and I decided to keep it small, close friends, family, nothing too fancy. My mom wasn't thrilled. She wanted something grand, something she could post about online. "It's your only wedding, Conrad," she said. "You'll regret not doing it big." Mason chimed in with, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll make sure the photos make it look expensive." That was the first time he offered to be our photographer. Leah was hesitant. She'd seen how Mason acted toward me, but my parents jumped on the idea immediately. "That's so generous of him," my mom said. "He's saving you thousands. Think of it as his wedding gift." Mason gave this smug smile and said, "Yeah, it's my gift to the happy couple. I'll make sure Conrad looks his best, for once." Everyone laughed except Leah. I tried to convince her it'd be fine. I wanted to keep the peace. "He's good at what he does," I told her, "and maybe this is his way of trying to make amends." She sighed but agreed. In hindsight, that was my first big mistake. As the months went on, Mason became strangely involved in our wedding planning. He'd text Leah suggesting photo-friendly color palettes or recommend venues based on lighting rather than atmosphere. It got intrusive fast. When Leah gently told him she already had her vision, he got defensive. "Just trying to help," he said, but his tone was sharp. Then he added, "You'll thank me when the pictures go viral." I brushed it off at first, but Leah started to feel uncomfortable around him. One night she told me, "Your brother doesn't like me. I can feel it. It's like he's waiting for me to mess up." I told her Mason could just be socially awkward sometimes, but deep down, I knew she was right. Things really started to unravel at my bachelor dinner. Mason showed up late, wearing sunglasses indoors, and immediately made the night about himself. "Sorry I'm late, guys. Had to shoot a celebrity event downtown. You know how it is." Then he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Can't believe my little brother's settling down before me. You sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility?" Everyone laughed awkwardly, but I felt that sting again. It was like he couldn't let a moment pass without reminding me I was somehow beneath him. After dinner, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, don't take this the wrong way, but Leah seems high maintenance. You sure she's marrying you for the right reasons?" I told him that was out of line, and he just smirked. "Relax, man. Just looking out for you." The wedding day itself started beautifully, at least at first. Leah looked stunning. The weather was perfect, the The venue was everything we hoped for. Mason arrived early, all smiles, with his camera gear and a new assistant. He acted professional, gave us directions for poses, cracked jokes. For a few hours, I actually thought I might have misjudged him. But then, small things started to feel off. During the couple photos, Mason kept telling me to loosen up in this condescending tone. He'd say things like, "Come on, Conrad, smile like you're not terrified." Or, "Leah, maybe turn your head a bit. Let's not have you outshine the groom too much." Everyone laughed it off, but I noticed how his assistant looked uncomfortable. Later that night, at the reception, Mason drank a little too much. He grabbed the mic and gave a toast that started out sweet and ended with, "Well, Leah, good luck taming this guy. You're gonna need it." My parents laughed. Leah's family didn't. I wanted to crawl under the table. After the wedding, we didn't get our photos right away. Mason said he needed time for post-production. A week turned into 2, then 3. I reached out, and he said, "Chill, man. I'm making you look cinematic." Finally, after 6 weeks, he sent over the album. At first, I thought something was wrong with my screen. My face looked warped. My skin tone was uneven, my teeth slightly yellowed, and my eyes had been subtly edited to look tired or dull. In some pictures, my posture was off balance, like I was slouching. Meanwhile, Leah looked flawless, but not in a good way. It was almost unnatural, like he tried to make her look like a model rather than herself. Every image had been tweaked just enough to make me look awkward and her look distant. Leah stared at the photos in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "He did this on purpose." I didn't want to believe it. But then I checked Mason's Instagram, and there they were. The same photos, posted publicly with captions like, "Always an honor to shoot my little brother's wedding. True love is hard to capture, but imperfections tell the story." The comments were brutal. People joked about my expressions, about how unphotogenic I was. Some even asked if I'd been nervous or sick that day. Mason replied to one comment with, "Haha, maybe just camera shy." That's when it hit me. He wasn't trying to help. He was trying to humiliate me. Leah was furious. "He did this to make you look like a joke," she said. "This wasn't an accident." And she was right. Because what Mason didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have realized, was that someone else at that wedding had been taking photos too. Someone whose work would soon expose him for what he really was. But I'll get to that part later. Because before the revenge came the fallout. And that's where everything truly began to spiral. When I showed my parents the photos, they didn't react the way I expected. I thought they'd be shocked, maybe angry on my behalf. But instead, my mom tilted her head, scrolled through the album, and said, "Well, I think they're artistic." Mason always has a unique eye. Unique? I repeated, trying not to raise my voice. "Mom, he made me look like I hadn't slept in weeks. He literally edited my teeth yellow." She frowned, like I was the problem. "Conrad, don't exaggerate. Maybe that's just how you looked that day." I stared at her, speechless. Leah was sitting next to me on the couch, her jaw tightening. "Mrs. Coleman," she said carefully, "we looked perfectly fine in the raw photos Mason showed us at the wedding. He did something to them." My mom waved a hand dismissively. "Leah, sweetie, I'm sure Mason wouldn't do that. He's a professional." I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask why Mason was always given the benefit of the doubt while I was treated like I was overreacting. But I'd been down that road before. My parents were experts at minimizing anything Mason did wrong. When I was 14, Mason accidentally deleted a project I'd spent weeks on. My dad said, "You should have saved a backup." When I was 17, Mason borrowed my car and returned it with a dent in the bumper. My mom said, "At least he filled up the tank." This was no different. They always excused him, no matter what he did. But Leah wasn't having it. After we left their house, she exploded the moment we got in the car. "I'm done being polite, Conrad. Your brother's a narcissist, and your parents enable him." I didn't even try to defend them. She was right. I'd spent my entire life trying to keep the peace in a family that didn't want peace. They wanted control. Mason had been their golden ticket, their success story. And now that I was married, with a life that didn't revolve around them, it was like they couldn't stand it. Still, I tried to be rational. I texted Mason that night and asked to meet for coffee. I didn't accuse him. I just said I wanted to talk about the photos. He replied immediately, "Sure thing. Bro, don't be too dramatic, okay?" That one sentence already told me how the meeting would go. We met at a small cafe downtown. Mason arrived late, Of course, and sat down like he owned the place. Sunglasses, perfect hair, camera bag slung casually over his chair. He didn't even apologize. So, he said, stirring his coffee, what's the issue? I kept my voice calm. You know what the issue is. Those photos. You made me look ridiculous. He smiled faintly. I didn't make you look that way, Conrad. I just enhanced the natural vibe. Natural vibe? I repeated. You edited me like I'd been hit by a truck. My eyes are bloodshot in half of them. Mason shrugged. I'm sorry if you don't like my artistic direction. I go for realism, not fairy tales. That's not realism, Mason. That's spite. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. Come on, don't be sensitive. It's not my fault you're insecure about how you look. For a moment, I actually saw red. But I forced myself to stay composed. You posted them online to humiliate me. Oh, please, he scoffed. You think I'd waste my time trying to humiliate you? You're not that important. That line hit harder than it should have. He said it with this coldness that made me realize something I'd ignored for years. He genuinely hated me. I'm taking the photos down, I said. He laughed. Good luck with that. They're my intellectual property. You signed the contract, remember? He was right. I'd signed his standard photography agreement without thinking twice. It gave him the right to post images for portfolio purposes. He'd weaponized that against me. You're unbelievable, I said quietly. You've turned our wedding into a joke. He leaned in, his tone suddenly soft, almost sympathetic. Conrad, you've always been so sensitive. That's your problem. You take everything personally. Maybe if you learned to relax, people wouldn't walk all over you. That was rich, him talking about people walking over me. I left the cafe without another word. But as I walked back to my car, something clicked. Mason wasn't just arrogant, he was calculated. He wanted me to react, to look like the irrational little brother while he played the misunderstood artist. It was a game to him. When I told Leah about the meeting, she was livid. You need to cut him off completely, she said. He's toxic, Conrad. I agreed. But cutting Mason off wasn't as simple as blocking his number. He was still tied to our family, and my parents refused to believe he could do any wrong. Every time we saw them, his name came up. Have you thanked Mason properly for the photos? My mom would ask. Yes, Mom. I'd reply through gritted teeth. Good. He put a lot of work into them. Work. Right. A few weeks later, the situation got worse. Much worse. It started when one of Leah's co-workers found the wedding photos on Instagram. She came up to Leah at work and said, I saw your wedding pictures online. They're interesting. Is everything okay between you two? Leah came home mortified. He's making people think our marriage is a joke, she said. I can't believe your brother is getting away with this. I went online again, and my stomach dropped. Mason had posted more. Behind-the-scenes shots, bloopers, even one where I was mid-blink with the caption, caught the groom deep in thought. The comments were even crueler now. This time, I didn't ask him to take them down. I demanded it. He replied with a single message, try me, little bro. The next day, my mom called. Conrad, what did you say to Mason? He's upset. He's upset. I snapped. He's destroying my reputation, Mom. Oh, stop being dramatic. It's just pictures. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. That phrase, mountain out of a molehill, was my mother's favorite. She'd used it my entire life to dismiss my feelings. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. But the damage was done. I was done playing nice. Meanwhile, Leah had started reaching out to other photographers from the wedding, friends who'd brought their cameras just for fun. One of them, a mutual friend named Evan, had taken a bunch of candid shots throughout the day. He sent us a folder, and when I opened it, my heart sank. They were beautiful, natural, emotional, full of love. Exactly how the day had felt. And in those photos, I looked normal, happy, not exhausted, not awkward. Just me. Which meant Mason's edits were intentional. Every unflattering change he'd made was deliberate. When I showed my parents the comparison, my dad said, well, maybe Mason's just experimenting with his style. His style? I said, Dad, his style is defamation. He sighed. Conrad, your brother's had a tough time lately. You know he's been struggling to get clients since that magazine job fell through. So that's what this was about. Jealousy. Mason was projecting his failures onto me. My engagement, my marriage, it all symbolized a kind of stability he didn't have. But instead of admitting that, he decided to destroy what I had. I didn't tell my parents that Leah and I had already started looking into our legal options. I didn't tell them we'd contacted a friend who worked in media law. because I knew if Mason caught wind of it, he'd twist it into another sob story about how his ungrateful brother was trying to ruin him. But I wasn't planning to just sit back anymore. Then, about a month later, we got an invitation to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Leah didn't want to go, but my mom insisted. It's just family, Conrad. Don't hold grudges. We went. I wish we hadn't. The moment we walked in, Mason was there, sitting at the table, grinning. My mom had set an extra place for him like it was a surprise reunion. Look who's here, she said cheerfully. Your brother wanted to make peace. Leah's grip on my hand tightened. Mason stood up, spread his arms, and said, no hard feelings, right? I stared at him, jaw clenched. You owe us an apology, Mason. He tilted his head. For what? For publicly humiliating us. For mocking our wedding. He feigned innocence. Oh, come on. You're still mad about that? I thought you'd have a sense of humor. Leah's voice cracked. You think this is funny? People at my work are whispering about us because of you. Mason sighed dramatically. Leah, I'm sorry you feel that way. Not I'm sorry I did that. Just I'm sorry you feel that way. Classic deflection. My dad tried to intervene. Boys, let's not ruin dinner. Mason came here to talk. But Mason wasn't interested in peace. He leaned forward and said, you know what your problem is, Conrad? You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm better at something than you. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Better? You're a grown man sabotaging your brother's wedding photos. That's not better. Mason, that's pathetic. Something in his face twitched. You've always thought you were the victim, he said quietly. But maybe people just see through you. That was it. Leah stood up. We're leaving. My mom gasped. Leah, sit down. We're having dinner. No, Leah said firmly. We're not going to sit here while you let your son insult us. And we walked out. That night, I realized something had shifted permanently. There was no going back to pretending everything was fine. Mason had made it clear. This wasn't sibling rivalry anymore. It was war. What none of them knew, though, was that the next move wouldn't be his. Because we were already setting the stage for something he'd never see coming. A few weeks passed after that dinner, and things went eerily quiet. Too quiet. Mason hadn't posted anything new, and for a moment, I started to wonder if he'd finally moved on. Maybe my parents' little family dinner had actually worked, even if it didn't seem like it at the time. Leah didn't buy it. He's not done, she said one night as we sat in the living room. Guys like him don't let things go. They wait. She was right. I just didn't realize how right she was. About 3 weeks later, I got an email from a coworker. The subject line read, Hey, is this you? I clicked it and froze. Attached was a link to a Facebook post from a wedding photographer community group. And there it was. Our wedding photo album, the same distorted set Mason had posted on Instagram, now accompanied by a long, self-righteous caption that made my stomach turn. He wrote, When your own family hires you and then accuses you of sabotage because they don't understand art. It's hard being an artist when people expect airbrushed fairy tales instead of honesty. Some clients can't handle the truth in their own faces. It got worse. He'd blurred out our last names, but kept enough context that anyone local could piece together who we were. Several people in the comments recognized the venue. A few photographers chimed in with things like, Yikes, sounds like a nightmare couple, or typical clients. Want everything for free and then complain. He was painting us as ungrateful, shallow, and entitled. Leah saw it before I could even tell her. I found her in the kitchen, clutching her phone, shaking with anger. He's making us out to be villains, she said, her voice trembling. And people believe him, Conrad. Look at the comments. There were hundreds. People calling us names, mocking us for not respecting the artist's vision. And Mason? He was loving it. He was replying to comments with things like, I guess some people just can't handle authenticity. Or, it's sad when family turns toxic. Toxic. The irony nearly made me laugh. That post spread quickly in the local wedding scene. Leah worked in event planning, and within days, vendors she knew started treating her differently. A florist she'd collaborated with before declined to work with her on a project, saying, We just want to stay out of the drama. That night, Leah broke down. She sat on the couch, tears streaming down her face, and said, I can't believe your brother did this. He's ruining my reputation, Conrad. And that's when something inside me shifted. Up until that point, I'd been angry, frustrated, humiliated, but now it felt different. Now it was personal. I called Mason, straight to voicemail. Texted him. No reply. I drove to his apartment the next morning, but when I got there, he wouldn't open the door. I could hear him moving inside, pretending not to be home. That's when I saw something through the small window near his front door. A printed copy of one of our wedding photos, taped to the wall. The same edited version of me with the dull eyes and uneven skin tone. He'd framed it like it was some kind of trophy. I stood there for a minute, completely numb, before finally leaving. That weekend, my mom called out of the blue. Honey, your brother's upset again, she started. I don't care, I said flatly. Well, you should, she said sharply. He told us you've been harassing him, showing up at his home, threatening him. What's going on, Conrad? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He told you that? Yes, she said. And frankly, I believe him. You've been acting strange lately. Acting strange. I wanted to scream. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He's been publicly trashing me and Leah online. He's costing her work opportunities. He edited our photos to humiliate us. And you're still taking his side. Maybe if you just apologized, she said softly, he'd take them down. That broke me. Not because of what she said, but because of how little she understood. Apologize? For what? For being his target? That night, Leah and I sat together, trying to decide what to do next. She wanted to contact a lawyer. I wanted to go over to his place and make him delete everything with my own hands. But we both knew that would only give him more ammunition. So instead, we waited. The next morning, I woke up to 50 missed calls from family members. My stomach dropped before I even unlocked my phone. My aunt's text was the first one I saw. Conrad, why would you say those things about your brother online? This is getting out of hand. Confused, I opened Facebook. Mason had posted again, but this time, he'd gone nuclear. He'd uploaded screenshots of fake messages that looked like they were from me. In them, I supposedly told him he was a failure, that Leah and I only invited him out of pity, and that his work was garbage compared to real photographers. And people believed it. The comments section was full of sympathy for him. Wow, your brother sounds awful. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Can't believe he treated you like that after you photographed his wedding for free. Leah and I sat in silence, watching it unfold in real time. I tried to laugh it off at first, but my chest felt tight. He actually fabricated messages. That's next-level psychotic. But Leah wasn't laughing. She stared at me, her voice shaking. Conrad, this is libel. This isn't just him being a jerk anymore. This is defamation. She was right. Mason had crossed from petty revenge into something darker, something deliberate. We gathered evidence, screenshots, timestamps, messages. But before we could even act, Mason made his next move. 2 days later, Leah's company called her into a meeting. Her boss told her they'd received complaints about her professionalism, with references to the public scandal involving her husband's family. They didn't fire her, but they suspended her from active projects until things settled down. Leah came home that day pale and silent. She didn't even take off her coat when she walked through the door. He's destroying everything we've worked for, she whispered. I took her hand, but I could feel how tense she was. We'll fix this, I said. But the truth was, I didn't know how. That night, I sat up scrolling through Mason's social media. I found something strange. His following had skyrocketed. Thousands of new followers in just a week. He was milking our situation for engagement. He even started a YouTube channel where he'd post behind-the-scenes breakdowns of his photography work, using our wedding as an example of difficult clients. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos, those comments. At around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It said, "Thought you'd like to see what real editing looks like." Attached was a photo. A new one. It was Leah, her wedding portrait, but Mason had edited her face. He'd distorted her smile, made her makeup look clownish, her dress wrinkled, her expression smug. It was malicious, cruel, almost cartoonish. I woke Leah up immediately. She looked at it once, then burst into tears. "He's obsessed, Conrad," she said between sobs. "This isn't just revenge. He's trying to break us." That was when I made my decision. Enough was enough. We filed a cease and desist through Leah's friend-in-law. Mason ignored it. My parents called again, furious that we'd involved lawyers against family. My mom said, "You're tearing this family apart, Conrad." I laughed bitterly. "No, Mom. Mason did that a long time ago." But she didn't hear me. She was too busy defending her favorite son. 2 weeks later, something happened that I'll never forget. My dad called. Not my mom, my dad. He rarely called me directly. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Conrad, he said, I think you should come over. Why? It's Mason, he said. He showed us something tonight. Something about you. When we got there, my mom was sitting on the couch, pale and shaking. Mason was there too, standing smugly beside the TV. Hey, little bro, he said casually. Want to explain this? On the screen was a video. It looked like a screen recording of messages, again, supposedly from me. But this time, they were worse. In them, I supposedly admitted to sabotaging Mason's career years ago by badmouthing him to clients. I supposedly called him names, insulted my parents, and bragged about ruining his chances with a woman he once dated. It was all fake. Every single line. But the way he presented it, with fake timestamps, profile pictures, and edited chat bubbles, it looked real. My mom was crying. How could you, Conrad? I didn't, I said, my throat tight. That's not me. Mason faked that. She looked at Mason, then back at me. Why would he do that? He smiled faintly. Yeah, Conrad. Why would I? Leah stepped forward. Because you're jealous. Because you can't stand seeing your brother happy while you're miserable. Mason's eyes flicked to her, cold and sharp. You've always been manipulative, he said. You turned him against his own family. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. Mason wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. He wanted to isolate me. To make everyone else see me the way he saw me. Undeserving, inferior, pathetic. And for a while, it worked. My parents didn't talk to me for weeks after that night. Family friends started pulling away. Even some of Leah's friends started avoiding us, afraid of being caught in the drama. But what Mason didn't know was that he'd made one fatal mistake. In his arrogance, he left a trail. Small details, metadata, file inconsistencies, timestamps that didn't line up. And the moment I noticed them, I knew exactly how to turn the tables. Because Mason wasn't the only one who could play dirty. But before I struck back, something else happened. Something that made this whole situation spiral completely out of control. The weeks that followed were the worst of my life. Every day felt like a slow-motion collapse, the kind where you can see the destruction coming. But no matter what you do, you can't stop it. Mason had managed to turn nearly everyone I loved, or at least everyone who used to respect me, against me. It started with the silence. My parents stopped answering my calls. My mom, who used to text me daily about small things like family dinners or recipes, suddenly disappeared from my inbox. I tried reaching out to my dad, but every conversation was brief, polite, and hollow. He always ended with, "Your mother's still upset, son. Give her time." Time. That was always their solution. Wait it out. Don't make waves. Keep quiet. But this time, it wasn't a storm that would pass. Mason had poisoned the well, and my family drank from it willingly. Leah, meanwhile, was losing her own footing. Her suspension at work had turned into what her company called an indefinite leave. They didn't fire her outright, but it was clear they wanted distance. She spent her days scrolling through emails, trying to find freelance clients, but her messages often went unanswered. A few replied politely, saying things like, maybe once things settle down. One evening, I walked into our living room and found her sitting in the dark, laptop closed, staring at the wall. I turned on a lamp, and she flinched. "Hey," I said softly. "You okay?" She nodded without looking at me. "Yeah, just tired." But I could tell she wasn't. There was this quiet resignation in her voice, the kind that comes when you've been pushed so far that fighting starts to feel pointless. That broke me. I sat beside her and took her hand. "We're going to fix this, Leah. I promise." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "How?" "He's got everyone believing his story. Every time we speak up, we look defensive. Every time we stay quiet, we look guilty." I didn't have an answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the kind of helplessness that eats away at your confidence. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was humiliation. My own brother had stripped me of my reputation, my family's trust, and my wife's peace of mind. And somehow, he was thriving. His photography page had blown up. He'd been featured in a local magazine as an honest artist standing firm against toxic clients. He'd turned our pain into publicity. 2 days later, my mom called. It was the first time I'd heard her voice in almost a month. "Conrad," she said curtly, "I think you owe your brother an apology." I nearly dropped the phone. "Come again. He came over last night," she continued. He showed us messages, real ones this time. Things you said about us. About how you were done with this family. My stomach dropped. Mom, those aren't real. He's faking everything. Stop it, she snapped. You've been blaming him for everything since you were kids. When are you going to take responsibility for your actions? It was like every childhood memory I'd buried came rushing back. The endless comparisons, the subtle favoritism, the way my parents always made excuses for Mason. Mom, I said quietly, do you hear yourself? He's manipulating you. He's done it for years. Enough, Conrad, she said, her voice trembling now. You're not welcome here until you can be civil. Then she hung up. I just sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Leah came into the room and saw my face. They took his side again, didn't they? I nodded. They don't even want me at the house anymore. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me. And in that moment, I realized how much she'd been carrying, how much this had cost her. Not just the public humiliation, but watching me fall apart piece by piece. After that, we stopped trying to fix things. We stopped explaining ourselves. There was no point. Every attempt to clear our names only fueled Mason's narrative. We started withdrawing from everyone. Mutual friends, co-workers, even extended family. Leah deleted her social media accounts entirely. I kept mine, but only to document everything Mason posted for evidence. That's when the nightmare started. I dreamed that Mason was standing at the end of our bed, holding his camera, taking pictures of us while we slept. I'd wake up sweating, convinced I'd heard the click of a shutter. I became paranoid. I'd see flashes of light outside our windows and think it was him. Once, I even ran outside at midnight because I swore I saw someone near our mailbox. But when I got there, the street was empty. Leah begged me to see someone, maybe talk to a therapist. But I couldn't. I didn't want to explain to a stranger that my brother, the same guy who used to build Lego castles with me as a kid, was now trying to destroy my life. Then one afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Mason's lawyer. A cease and desist. For harassment. Apparently, Mason had filed a complaint saying I'd been spreading false information and attempting to damage his business reputation. The letter warned that any further defamatory claims could lead to a lawsuit. I couldn't believe it. The man who ruined my wedding photos, fabricated messages, and publicly mocked me was now claiming I was harassing him. I showed Leah the letter, and she just stared at it in disbelief. He's flipping the script again, she said. He's making you the aggressor. And he was good at it. Too good. He knew exactly how to play the system. But that was also the moment something changed inside me. I stopped feeling scared. I stopped feeling helpless. The anger that had been simmering under the surface began to solidify into something colder, sharper, purpose. That night, while Leah slept, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started making a folder. I called it Project Exposure. I organized everything, screenshots, timestamps, side-by-side comparisons of his edited and original photos, emails, text logs, his fake evidence. I backed everything up to an encrypted drive. I wasn't sure how I'd use it yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let him win. For weeks, I stayed quiet. I didn't respond to Mason's posts. I didn't contact my parents. I didn't even mention him to anyone. Outwardly, I was silent. Inwardly, I was plotting. Leah started noticing the shift. You seem calmer, she said one morning over coffee. I'm done reacting, I told her. He feeds off that. He wants a reaction. So what's the plan? She asked. You'll see, I said. Not yet, but soon. She nodded slowly. I think she knew what was happening, even if I didn't say it out loud. This wasn't about making Mason feel guilty anymore. This was about accountability. But before I could put any plan into motion, life dealt us another blow. Leah's grandmother passed away suddenly. She lived in another state, and Leah wanted to attend the funeral. I told her I'd stay home to handle work and follow up on a few things regarding Mason. She agreed, though I could tell she hated leaving me alone. The morning she left, she hugged me tightly and said, "Promise me you won't do anything reckless." I promised, but the house felt unbearable without her. Too quiet, too full of memories of everything that had gone wrong. 3 nights later, I got another message from an unknown number again. It was a video this time. I hesitated before playing it. When I did, I almost dropped my phone. It was security footage, grainy, low quality, but unmistakable. It showed me, standing outside a photography studio. Mason's studio. But here's the thing. I'd never been there. The timestamp showed the night before. In the video, I looked angry, pacing in front of the door, then pounding on it. It ended with me supposedly kicking the door once before storming off. Attached was a text. "Next time you vandalize my property, I'll call the police." I felt my blood run cold. Mason had staged it. Probably hired someone to impersonate me in the dark, maybe even used video manipulation. He was setting me up. And this time, he was escalating to something dangerous. When Leah got home 2 days later, I showed her everything. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said quietly, "He's trying to push you over the edge." And she was right. But what Mason didn't know was that he'd already done it. Not by breaking me, but by waking up a part of me that had finally stopped caring about keeping the peace. The kind of calm that comes not from forgiveness, but from absolute clarity. I wasn't going to confront him anymore. I wasn't going to beg my parents to see reason. I was going to take everything he'd done, the lies, the manipulation, the evidence, and turn it into something so public, so undeniable, that he'd never be able to talk his way out of it again. But before I could set the plan in motion, Mason made one more move. One that hit lower than I ever thought he could go. And that's when things truly began to unravel. It's strange how quickly despair can turn into drive once you've lost everything. After months of humiliation, silence, and that gut-twisting helplessness, something inside me hardened. The fear was still there, but it wasn't running the show anymore. I'd hit the bottom, and when you're already there, the only direction left is up. Leah noticed the shift first. "You've been smiling in your sleep lately," she said one morning. I chuckled. Maybe I'm dreaming of payback. She smiled faintly, but I could see the worry behind her eyes. "Just don't lose yourself in it." "I won't," I said, but I already knew I was lost in it, just not in the way she feared. For the first time in months, I felt focused. Clear. I started small. Every night, after Leo went to bed, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my laptop, headphones in, building a case piece by piece. I'd learned that Mason's studio website used a third-party content platform that stored version histories of uploaded photos. If you knew how to access the backend data, well, let's just say deleted files weren't really deleted. I found them. Every unedited shot from our wedding, time-stamped, metadata intact. They were perfect, raw, emotional, untouched. The same files he'd later distorted to make me look like a fool. That was my first victory. The proof that everything he'd done was deliberate. The next step was finding leverage. Not legal yet, public. Mason thrived on perception. He cared about being admired, respected, envied. If his reputation cracked, his ego would shatter. So I started building an online presence of my own. Quietly, carefully. I created a photography blog under a pseudonym, The Honest Lens. It was designed like an industry insider page, posting thoughtful critiques of photo manipulation, integrity in editing, and the ethics of digital artistry. And every week, I'd feature a new case study. Subtle ones at first, wedding photos ruined by unethical editing, clients misrepresented by careless photographers. I never mentioned Mason's name, but anyone in the local photography community who looked close enough would start connecting the dots. Meanwhile, Leah's luck started to turn. A small design agency reached out after seeing her portfolio on an old site she'd forgotten about. They loved her work and didn't care about the drama. Watching her get that first freelance project again was like seeing color return to her face. "You think this is the start of things getting better?" she asked me one night as we ate takeout on the couch. "I think it's the start of him losing control," I said. A month passed, then two, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the balance began to shift. Mason's engagement online started to falter. I noticed the comments under his posts becoming mixed. Some people began asking questions like, "Hey, didn't this editing style get criticized recently on The Honest Lens?" Or, "This looks similar to that case study from that ethics blog." He ignored them at first. Then he got defensive. And that's when the real opportunity appeared. One night, I got a message from someone named Tessa, a former client of Mason's. She'd seen one of my blog posts, one that mirrored her exact experience. "I think your article is about me," she wrote. "Did you work with Mason too?" I froze. I hadn't mentioned him by name. But she knew. We started talking privately. Turns out, Mason had pulled similar stunts before, slightly warping clients' photos to make them seem raw and authentic, then posting them without permission when they complained. She even sent me screenshots of emails where he mocked his clients behind their backs. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an isolated case. Mason's cruelty wasn't just personal, it was habitual. Over the next month, I found 3 more people like her. A small network of people Mason had hurt or humiliated, all of them convinced they were alone. They weren't. We started collaborating. I anonymized their stories, published their screenshots, and turned the honest lens into a quiet movement. Not a smear campaign, an expose. At first, Mason probably didn't realize what was happening. But eventually, he did. Because one morning, I woke up to see a long, panicked rant on his business page. Beware of fake journalism targeting small artists. Don't believe anonymous blogs spreading lies about me. People are jealous of success. Classic Mason, turning victimhood into performance. But the more he protested, the guiltier he looked. A few days later, I got an email from an editor at a photography magazine. She'd seen my blog and wanted to interview the honest lens about integrity in modern editing. I hesitated. If I said yes, I'd risk exposure. But Leah looked at me and said, "You should do it. Not as revenge, just as truth." So I did. I kept it anonymous, voice disguised in the recorded interview, using only facts, documentation, and examples, many of them Mason's. The article went viral in the local creative community. The fallout was immediate. Mason's bookings dropped overnight. His sponsorship deals with 2 wedding venues were quietly canceled. And for the first time in years, he stopped posting. That silence was beautiful. But I didn't stop there. I wasn't done. Behind the scenes, I'd been working on something else, something legal. With Leah's help and Tessa's documentation, we compiled a shared claim. False representation, defamation, unauthorized use of client material. It was a slow burn, quiet emails, carefully drafted statements, but it was gathering momentum. By then, Leah's freelance work was thriving. She'd landed a big project with a destination wedding planner who'd seen her handle chaos with grace. Watching her rebuild herself while I rebuilt my plan, it gave me strength I didn't realize I still had. We started going out again. Dinners, small weekend trips, laughing without that constant tension in the air. For the first time since the wedding, I didn't feel haunted. And yet, Mason lingered like a shadow. Sometimes I'd see his profile pop up, inactive but still there. I knew he was watching. He couldn't resist. He had to see whether his little brother was still suffering. But I wasn't suffering anymore. I was thriving quietly, patiently, building momentum for something far more devastating than any public argument could achieve. The next turning point came from somewhere unexpected, an invitation. A well-known wedding expo was coming to the city, a big annual event where photographers, planners, and vendors showcased their work. Leah's new company got a booth. Mason had one too. When Leah showed me the flyer, she looked uneasy. "He'll be there," she said. "I know," I replied. "You're not planning anything reckless, right?" "Nothing reckless," I said. "Just poetic." She didn't push further, but the look in her eyes said she knew I was lying a little. In the weeks leading up to the expo, The Honest Lens announced an upcoming live reveal, a major story exposing a pattern of misconduct by a well-known industry figure. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The buzz grew naturally. Then, 2 nights before the event, I got an email from Mason. Short. Simple. "We need to talk. Don't do anything stupid, Conrad." It was the first time he'd contacted me directly in nearly a year. I stared at that message for a long time, then replied, "You've had plenty of time to talk. I'll see you at the expo." That night, I didn't sleep. Not from anxiety this time, but from anticipation. Leah noticed. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Not for revenge. For closure." She smiled faintly. "You keep telling yourself that." The morning of the expo, the city felt electric. The venue was a massive hall buzzing with people and booths. Leah's display was elegant, minimalist. Her work spoke for itself. Mason's, on the other hand, was flashy as ever. Oversized banners, dramatic lighting, self-portraits disguised as brand art. He spotted me from across the hall, and for a split second, our eyes met. He froze. I smiled. Then the announcer's voice came over the loudspeaker. Up next, an exclusive presentation by The Honest Lens on ethics and authenticity in wedding photography. The audience gathered. Mason's head snapped toward the stage. He looked pale, and as the screen lit up with a title slide, the same blog logo he'd been denouncing for months. He realized exactly who was behind it. That was the moment the power dynamic shifted forever. But the best part wasn't the reveal itself. It was what came after. The wave of consequences, the unraveling of everything Mason had built on lies. And it all started with one click. When I walked up to the stage that morning, I felt like my heart was punching through my ribs. Not from fear. No, that part of me had burned away months ago. This was something else. Something cleaner. The feeling of a man who'd been cornered, ridiculed, and stripped of everything, finally walking into the light with truth in his hands. The crowd was larger than I expected. Rows of photographers, planners, and vendors. All those familiar faces who'd whispered about me behind my back after Mason's lies. Leah stood near the front, her arms folded, that faint proud smirk she got when she knew something big was coming. Mason was off to the side, pretending to scroll his phone, but I could see the tightness in his jaw, the flicker of panic under the surface. I began calmly. A lot of people in this industry talk about passion, creativity, and honesty. But no one really talks about power, the kind people get when they control how others are seen. The lights dimmed, and behind me, the first slide appeared, 2 photos side by side. One raw, untouched image of a smiling groom and bride. Then the same photo, warped, shadows deepened, skin tone dulled, posture subtly distorted. Both of these were taken the same day, I said. The same couple, the same camera. But the difference between them shows what happens when art becomes a weapon. A murmur rippled through the room. I clicked to the next slide, more examples. Photos of Mason's other victims, all anonymized but painfully familiar. One woman's face twisted into a caricature of itself. A groom edited to look perpetually scowling. Captions he'd used that mocked their personalities, their love stories, their humanity. And then the screen filled with receipts, emails, contracts, DMs. His words, his arrogance. Some photographers claim authenticity as an excuse to humiliate their clients. They'll call it realism or honesty, but what it really is control. The room was silent except for the hum of the projector. I didn't rush. I didn't dramatize. I just laid out the facts. Each image landed heavier than the last. At one point, Mason muttered something under his breath, too low for anyone else to hear, but I saw his lips move. "You're dead." I ignored him. The final slide appeared, a screenshot of his original Instagram post about our wedding. The one where he mocked me and Leah for imperfections. I looked directly at the audience and said, "That was my wedding. I'm the brother he gifted this to." Gasps. A few people turned toward Mason. Someone whispered, "That's his brother?" Mason's face drained of color. I spent a year being told to keep quiet, to let it go, to not make waves because family comes first. But when someone weaponizes trust, family doesn't mean protection anymore. It means silence. And I'm done being silent. I stepped back. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in that low, electric buzz that happens when people are realizing they've been watching a villain masquerading as a victim. Leah walked up afterward and squeezed my hand so tight I could barely feel my fingers. "You did it," she whispered. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because while the expo presentation shattered Mason's public image, I still had the legal side brewing quietly in the background. And that, I knew, would finish him. Within 48 hours, photography forums lit up with discussions about the exposé. Half the comments were from stunned clients, sharing similar stories. A few even posted their own photo comparisons. Every thread eventually led back to Mason's name. His business Instagram lost over 10,000 followers in a week. Sponsorships vanished. A major event company that had used him for years released a statement saying they were re-evaluating partnerships to maintain ethical standards. And then came the magazine article. The same editor who'd interviewed the Honest Lens before published a follow-up, this time revealing my identity. She'd reached out privately and asked if I was ready to go public. I hesitated for a long time. Part of me feared the backlash, the family drama being dragged into headlines. But I realized something. Mason had already stolen my privacy. This time, I'd steal back my narrative. The article hit like a storm. Photographer exposed for defamation, manipulation, and targeting clients by his own brother. It was everywhere. Mason's remaining defenders scattered. Even his usual charm couldn't save him now. He tried to post a shaky apology video, saying things like, "I was misunderstood," and art isn't always pretty, but the damage was irreversible. People weren't buying it. Comments poured in, some mocking, some furious, most disappointed. But the real blow came from within his own circle. One of Mason's former assistants, the quiet young guy who'd worked with him at my wedding, contacted me privately. He said he couldn't stay silent anymore. Apparently, Mason had not only manipulated photos but also forged client reviews, stolen editing presets from other photographers, and routinely used people's images for promotions without consent. He even admitted Mason had bragged about what he'd done to me. He said he'd make you wish you never married that girl. That message hit me hard. The assistant provided everything: timestamps, file histories, messages Mason had sent bragging about breaking clients who criticized him. We handed all of it to our lawyer. From that point on, it wasn't just about family, it was about justice. Our lawyer filed a formal complaint with the state's Photography and Business Ethics Board. At the same time, we pursued a defamation and damages suit. We knew it would take time, maybe months, maybe years, but Mason's arrogance had already left him defenseless. The first hearing was brutal for him. The board reviewed evidence, including metadata showing that his edits had intentionally exaggerated flaws. They even found that he'd photoshopped messages to fake my confessions. The digital forensics expert we hired dismantled his lies piece by piece. Mason tried to act confident, but you could see him unraveling. He blamed his assistant, claimed his files had been hacked, said he'd been experimenting with satire. But the truth was undeniable. And in a poetic twist, every piece of evidence he'd once used to smear me became the very rope he hung himself with. Meanwhile, life for me and Leah finally started to breathe again. She grew her business beyond anything we'd imagined. She started booking international clients, people who respected her resilience, who saw her as a model of grace under fire. I began consulting for small creative companies, helping them navigate contracts and ethics. Ironically, Mason's destruction became my redemption. The best part? Our relationship, mine and Leah's, became unbreakable through it all. We learned to find humor in the ashes. Sometimes, when an email from a lawyer or journalist would pop up, Leah would grin and say, "Another brick in the wall." Months later, Mason tried to contact me one last time. His tone had changed. No more arrogance, no false bravado. Just a short, defeated message. "You win. Are you happy now?" I didn't reply, not because I hated him, but because I'd finally stopped needing his validation. Revenge wasn't about making him suffer. It was about freeing myself from the version of me he'd created, the quiet brother, the scapegoat, the joke. But there was one final, quiet act of closure that I couldn't resist. A few weeks after the final hearing, I went to the park where Mason used to shoot engagement photos. It was sunset, the lights soft and golden, the kind he always called perfect hour. I sat on a bench overlooking the pond, opened my phone, and uploaded one last post to the Honest Lens. It read, "Art should tell the truth, but sometimes truth tells on the artist." Attached was a single photo, one of the original, untouched images from our wedding. Me and Leah laughing mid-spin, the sunlight cutting through her veil, no edits, no filters. Just raw, honest love. Within an hour, it went viral. Thousands of people shared it, captioning it with words like authenticity, resilience, healing. Mason's name never appeared again in my posts. I didn't need it to. Everyone already knew. That night, Leah leaned against me on the couch, scrolling through the comments. "Feels like it's over," she said quietly. "Yeah," I said. "Almost." Because while Mason had lost his career, his reputation, and every ounce of credibility he'd ever built, I still hadn't told him the one thing I'd discovered during all of this, the secret that had set everything in motion without him even realizing it. And that final truth, that was the part that broke him completely. 6 months after the hearing, life finally felt still again. No whispers, no angry calls, no anonymous messages in the middle of the night. Just quiet. I'd almost forgotten what that sounded like. Leah and I had moved to a new apartment by the lake, somewhere brighter, somewhere that didn't carry ghosts in the walls. I started each morning by brewing coffee, sitting on the balcony, and watching the sunlight dance across the water. There was something almost poetic about it, the reflection, the calm, the way light had become a metaphor for everything I'd fought to bring back into my life. But every now and then, when the breeze carried the faint click of a camera shutter from someone walking by, I'd still flinch. Trauma leaves fingerprints like that. I didn't think much about Mason anymore. Not out of forgiveness, but out of fatigue. He'd become a noise I'd finally tuned out. Or so I thought. Then one afternoon, as I was wrapping up some editing work for a new client, my phone buzzed. The name that flashed on the screen made my stomach drop. Mom. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly a year. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was small, almost fragile. Conrad, it's about your brother. I didn't speak. I just waited. He's not doing well, she said finally. His business is gone. His studio shut down. Clients want refunds. He's been blacklisted from every major event company. He can't get hired anywhere. And now he's drinking again. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. Mom hesitated. He says you did this to him. I closed my eyes. He did it to himself. She didn't argue this time. That, more than anything, told me how far things had fallen. He's been staying with us, she continued. We didn't know what else to do. He barely leaves his room. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered the look on Leah's face the night she found that edited photo of herself. How small and broken she looked. I remembered the letter from the lawyer calling me a harasser. The fake messages, the lost clients, the humiliation. I hope he finds help, I said softly. But I can't be part of that. Mom sighed. He misses you. I laughed bitterly. He misses control. That ended the conversation. But something in me couldn't let it rest. Not out of compassion, out of curiosity. I wanted to see what became of him when the spotlight finally turned away. A week later, I drove to my parents' house. I didn't tell Leah. She would have tried to stop me. It was a cold, gray morning, the kind where everything feels heavier than it should. My dad answered the door, older somehow, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and shame. He's in the basement, he said quietly. Just be gentle. I wasn't sure I could be. When I went downstairs, the smell hit me first. Alcohol, stale air, and neglect. Mason was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at a dark TV screen. He looked nothing like the man who used to strut through weddings like a celebrity. His hair was unkempt, his eyes sunken. The swagger was gone. When he finally noticed me, he laughed weakly. Well, look who the internet's favorite whistleblower dragged in. I didn't respond. I just sat across from him, studying the ruins of what used to be my brother. He leaned back and sighed. You really did it, huh? You ruined me. I met his eyes. No, Mason. You ruined yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you. He smirked, but it faltered quickly. You always thought you were better than me. I never did, I said quietly. I just stopped believing you were better than everyone else. He poured himself another drink, his hands trembling. You think you won, huh? You think people love you now? You'll see. They'll forget you too. I don't need them to love me, I said. I just needed them to know the truth. For a long time, we sat in silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the old refrigerator upstairs. Mason finally broke it. They're not hiring me anywhere, he muttered. I tried doing portraits again, but no one wants to book with this scandalous artist. That's what they call me now. A joke. A liability. He laughed bitterly. You know what it's like to be laughed at, don't you? Now I do too. There was something in his tone, not quite regret, but the first crack of self-awareness I'd ever heard from him. You could have apologized, I said. You could have fixed it before it ever got this far. He shook his head slowly. I couldn't. Not after everything. I don't know how. That, somehow, hurt more than anything else. Because it was honest. Mason didn't know how to be anything but proud, even when it destroyed him. I stood to leave. As I turned toward the stairs, he spoke again, his voice low and slurred. You always wanted to beat me. Now you did. Congratulations. I stopped, but I didn't turn back. You were never the competition, Mason. You were the lesson. And I left. After that day, I didn't see him again for a long time. My parents stopped bringing him up. Leah and I focused on building our lives, and for once, the world felt aligned again. My small consulting firm grew faster than I expected. Within a year, I was speaking at conferences about ethical practices in creative industries. The irony wasn't lost on me. Leah's business exploded, too. She became one of the top event planners in the region, known for her authenticity and warmth. The same traits Mason once mocked her for became her greatest strengths. Every now and then, people would ask during interviews, what inspired you to start advocating for creative transparency? I'd smile and say, A personal experience that taught me how much harm a camera can cause when it's held by the wrong hands. That usually got a knowing nod. Then, one morning about a year later, I got another message from an unfamiliar email address. The subject line just said, "For what it's worth." It was from Mason. He wrote, "I saw the article about you and Leah. You both look happy. I'm not going to pretend I didn't hate you for what happened. But I get it now. I lost myself in trying to make people see me as something I wasn't. I guess you made me see the truth, even if it took losing everything. I sold my equipment. Going to rehab next week. Don't bother replying. I just wanted you to know you were right. M." I sat there for a long time staring at that message. There was no apology, no closure, just exhaustion, finally turned inward. I never replied. Not out of anger, just peace. Some stories don't need sequels. Leah walked in later, saw my expression, and asked, "Something wrong?" I showed her the email. She read it, then nodded. "So that's it." "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's it." She kissed my temple and whispered, "Good. Let it stay that way." We went out for a walk that evening. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, the same kind of light Mason used to chase in his photos. Except this time, there was no camera. Just us. Real, unedited, imperfectly human. As we reached the lake, Leah stopped and looked out over the water. "You know," she said softly, "you never told me what you meant when you said you had one last secret. The thing that really broke him." I smiled faintly. "Remember that anonymous expose? The one that started everything?" She nodded. "I didn't just write it," I said. "I published it from his computer." Her head snapped toward me. "What?" "I found out his system had a cloud sync link to his old drives. I uploaded the files directly through his own metadata. The first upload pinged his IP address. The industry thought he leaked his own misconduct, trying to preempt bad press. That's what shattered his credibility before I ever stepped on that stage." Leah's jaw dropped. "You mean he thought he exposed himself?" "Exactly." I looked out at the water, watching the reflection of the sunset ripple. "He destroyed himself without even realizing it." She was silent for a long moment, then shook her head slowly, a mix of disbelief and admiration. "You're scarier than I thought." I smiled. "Only when someone gives me a reason to be." We stood there, hand in hand, the air cool and still. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing in someone's shadow. I wasn't the little brother anymore. I wasn't the family disappointment, the quiet one, the easy target. I was just Conrad, a man who finally reclaimed his story. And as the last light dipped behind the horizon, I whispered the line that had been sitting on my tongue since the day this all began, the line that defined the end of it all. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destroying someone else's life. It's about taking yours back.